First of all, I would like to say three main points which I think are related to our today's discussion. First one is that Balkans continue to be an area of instability and that there are a lot of challenges there. I actually, regarding that, and as John started today with quotes, I have to do one as well. I would like to quote Otto von Bismarck, because he said, if there is ever another war in Europe, it will come out of some damn silly thing in the Balkans. It will be so there is always that danger, and and Balkan is full of these unexploded mines which can explode in any minute. The other thing which I was to point out is that actually Russia in the region has different strategy for each and every country, no matter how small is the country. And it's doing different things in all these countries, which I will try somehow to show. And the other thing is that, which bothers me and which I think is important, is that until now we don't have actually a meaningful answer to Russian propaganda and to Russian influence in the region. And so that is something which requires, I somehow feel that journalism and the journalist work is not sufficient, and that the forces should be joined to make a meaningful answer and to be able to react in the right way to whatever is now showing up as Putin influence and Russian propaganda in the region. Let me briefly start with an overview with Croatia. And it's actually not the right time to talk about Croatia because we have developing crises there. We still don't know if HDZ government in the country would survive. There are switches in political alliances almost on twice in a day, not only on daily basis, but morning news are not any more news in the afternoon. So with all this kind of ups and downs, I think what describes political situation in Croatia best, I will use words of a Croatian journalist whom I recently read her article, and she mentioned three major figures on political stage in Croatia: Orešković, Petrov, and Karamarko. They are now like three leading politicians in Croatia. And she said that three of them are actually acting like three pilots who are running a plane with 4 million people inside the plane, but without plane license, without license for a pilot. So they meaning that they can crash that plane any minute, in any direction. And we will see whether Croatia will go in direction of new elections, or whether somehow HDZ would manage to stabilize situation. But when it comes to actually, in a way, Russian influence in the region is involved in this crisis. Russia didn't provoke this. This is locally made mess, which we have now. But the wife of Karamarko, one of major politicians, is involved as consultant in a company which has relations to MOL, to Hungarian company, and as well to Russian interests to Russian interests in the region, because it appears that Russians were trying to bypass the sanctions against Russia and to establish a company in Croatia. It's called Migrit, and Migrit was appearing as a big investor in Finland and doing a huge energy project. So, and the fact that the wife of one high-positioned Croatian politician is involved in this company is part of the crisis which is now ongoing in Croatia. And basically, the Russian interest in Croatia is based on energy and is based on somehow first of all, they are trying not to have diversification of sources of energy, because they were successful until now not to let Croats to build this huge storage for gas, which was planned for years. And that was supposed to be built on the island Kirk, but it never happened. And somehow the project is constantly being postponed, being changed, being reshaped, and so on. But that project would reduce dependence on Russian gas very much, and it's not happening. Apart from that, as it is well known, Croatia is a Catholic country, so there is no this Orthodox connection, which is working for the rest of Balkans. But what is generally interesting, this new Russian interest in Balkans, because we are talking of the space which is not space of former Soviet Union. We are talking of a space which was out of either East or West alliances before. And actually, it's a kind of strange that Russia didn't have access to that area until the fall of Berlin Wall. And Russia played completely different role in the past. Apart from Croatia, where, for example, when it comes to media, the way how Russian have influence is through this new, very popular copy and paste journalism. Because of Sputnik and other Russian news agencies, which Boško was talking about earlier, Croatian press is picking up a lot of this stuff and just changing the accent and changing the wording, but basically using the same news. So a lot of international stories written by Russian media you can find in Croatian media because they were picked up, but the source is lost. And so major international events are showing up as narrated by Russians. But they are showing up like written by Croatian news agency HINA or this or that. So it doesn't say Sputnik. Sputnik is lost in copy and paste business. But generally, in other parts of Balkans, the major role of Russia is somehow to spoil Euro-Atlantic integrations and somehow to spoil the processes which are leading these countries to either European Union or closer to NATO. Balkan is an important playground where Russia is fighting West. And so from Russian point of view, Bosnia is like failed. Bosnia is artificial country, the same as Kosovo. And they are seen in Russian way of thinking, both countries, Bosnia and Kosovo, are Western projects, and they should fail. And so the very interesting thing is, we heard Boško talking about 110 Russian institutions in Serbia. There are hardly few in Bosnia, far less. There is no many Russian NGOs, there is no Russian media stations or anything, and there is no need for that, because in Bosnia, it's easy to disrupt, it's easy to spoil things. You can use local forces to be a spoiler. You don't need your own radio station when a local journalist for few dollars would do a job. So almost in every Bosnian outlet, there are so-called pro-Russian journalists who are actually operating within public broadcasting system, who are being paid by their local televisions and radio stations. So the other way how Russia is acting in Bosnia, I would say legally, through the system without breaking any law, but actually spoiling situation in the country, is through all of you are aware that basically the war in Bosnia ended with Dayton Peace Agreement, and part of this Dayton Peace Agreement was constitution of so-called Peace Implementation Council, which this council has over 50 countries, but some of them are major countries, among them is Russia. And this, the wheel of this council is being executed through the figure of High Representative So international community has somebody who is overlooking peace process in Bosnia and who is, I would say, who is babysitting the peace agreement achieved in 1995. So it's very interesting if we look historically. Until 2005, things in Bosnia were going in right direction, in a sense of there was some kind of reconciliation, there was some kind of contact between Serb Republic and so-called Muslim Croat Federation. There were some common institution. Even a common army was established. Particular good things were done during the when Pedi Eshdown was the high representative. But what is happening since 2005, things are going downhill in Bosnia. One major reason why things are going downhill is because this Peace Implementation Council is completely paralyzed. And it's paralyzed because whatever decision is to make there, Russia is against it, and Russia says no. And high representative in Bosnia, it is now Austrian diplomat Inzko, he cannot act if this council doesn't say, yes, this is what you should do. Otherwise, this high representative has huge powers. He can change politicians, he can introduce laws, he can stop some laws which are damaging to certain ethnic group. And so he could use his power for good. But he's just now a figure sitting there without doing anything, and that is enough to push Bosnia down the hill. And so certainly Russian ambassador is regular visitor to Republika Srpska, and he has a good partner in Dodik who is not hiding his plans that he wants, that he's on the road of secession. So there is this important regulatory body which could push Bosnia in right direction is paralyzed, but we cannot say nothing illegal is done. I mean, it's just by one big power telling no to whatever is to be done in Bosnia. So certainly Bosnia, apart from that, Bosnia has another problems. There is Russian influence there is actually turning local, using local animosities and using local troubles to make them bigger and to make them explode. That's how. That's in what sense this influence can be seen. Then when it comes to their narration in which you can see in Bosnian media, it is always against European Union. It's against, it's exposing and it's satanizing European Union as something terrible which will happen to the country if the country joins the European Union. And it is praising Putin. And basically, nowadays, if an ordinary Bosnian, and the way how people are seeing Putin in Bosnia is they are seeing him as a strong man, they are seeing him as a man with his, who knows what he's doing. In particular, Syria is used as an example where the West is weak and incapable to move. And look, Putin delivered in Syria, and so people don't go in details, they don't watch. They are happy just with headline news. They don't analyze news. They don't analyze lies. So it's amazing how, without having paid outlet in Bosnia, Russian propaganda is working there. As we saw in this wonderful presentation given by Boško, how much energy Russia is naturally putting in Serbia because it is considered the major country in the region. On the other hand, Montenegro, mentioned here as well through President Đukanović, is completely another case. In Montenegro, we have actually Russian physical presence. It's a country where probably half of Montenegrin coast is owned by Russians. It has at least 3,000 30,000 Russians who are residents, with permanent residence in Montenegro. For Russian point of view, they believed that they owned that country because they do own quite a lot of land and quite a lot of the tourist industry. But then Montenegro political leadership somehow, again, we can blame the same leadership because they let this thing happen and they sold their country cheaply. They sold their country, a lot of land to Russians. On the other hand, Đukanović took a firm stand and he decided that his future is with NATO and with European Union. One interesting thing which Montenegro did, Montenegro even introduced euro without being member of European Union. And it works out perfectly well. So it's a euro country, but then Russians were a kind of, they almost feel like they lost their own property, and they had very, very, very hysterical reactions over Montenegro moving in direction of NATO. And they used tiny little opposition parties as their clients there. But at least these politicians were not capable to change the game in Montenegro. They staged everyday protest. They were marching through Podgorica with Putin pictures. They were reminding Montenegrins that it was NATO who bombed Serbia and Montenegro. They were bringing all these memories back, and listening to them, you would think that the bombardment of Serbia and Montenegro happened yesterday, but it didn't change for the time being situation in Montenegro. I just was recently there, and I was staying in a hotel in Budva, and I went to talk to the owner to find out who is the owner of the hotel and to find out what is happening. I was interested in what is happening in tourist industry. And Montenegrin guy who is there, he said that he owns the hotel, but half of the hotel is owned by former KGB agent. And he said that even that guy is now a kind of supporting Montenegrin move to NATO. He says because of safety of his property. He said, so I thought that type of things are possible only in Balkans. It is at least, like Đukanović can secure this smooth integration of his country to European Union exactly in a way in which was described earlier during our first session, because we have to have in mind that Montenegro is a country of 600,000 people, and so it's fairly easy to manage a country of that size. The other country in the region, which, when it comes to, I don't want to miss this to tell you, there is no Russian media in Montenegro except a local radio station which is serving, its community station, which is serving Russians who providing service information for Russians who live there. But there is no Sputnik, there is no big Russian outlets and so on. The reason is this: Russians actually have strong influence on some Serb-owned media outlets in Montenegro. So no need for their own, because this Serb-owned media in Montenegro are doing a job of their propaganda and working for them. I don't know whether it is for free or whether they are paid to do that. That I didn't investigate. Apart from Montenegro, there is as well Russian influence in Macedonia. Again, another messy country, and we have as well developing story there, and we don't know how this colored revolution would end, in what directions events are going, but this is perfect example to show how in Montenegro Russians are supporting people in the street against parliament, against government, against everybody. But in Macedonia, they support people in government, and they are against people in the street because in Macedonia they have authoritarian and corrupt government, which is perfect partner for all deals, for all. So I mean, there is no pattern. It's just the way how they act in each of this country is completely different, and it depends on single particular interest. And the problem is that the major role is actually to spoil things in Balkans, not to build them, not to make things work, but to disrupt processes, to stop these countries from growing to the European Union, to stop these countries from joining NATO. Because, as we mentioned earlier, Montenegro is seeing that the best thing they can do, that what is good for safety, for foreign investments, for progress of this country is to join NATO and not to stay on its own. So it's a road on stability, and it's not good for the country if this process is being disrupted as it is happening nowadays. I just would like to say that dealing on daily basis, we have as well, we actually as well have Kosovo there, and Kosovo is very often used by Putin. He's using Kosovo as a case that mentioning that actually Kosovo was, the intervention in Kosovo in 1999 was done without UN security resolution, you know, and he's using that as an excuse for his actions in Crimea and in other places and so on. But what is not, nobody is reminding him of the fact that at that time Russians were together with NATO, and Russian troops together with NATO troops entered Pristina after the bombardment in 1999, and Russia was completely on the side of Western powers when crisis in Kosovo was resolved, and it's just backward that they changed position on Kosovo, but at the time there was no any. I mean, Russian soldiers were together with NATO soldiers, and they were first to enter Pristina when immediately after NATO bombing. So Putin is inventing history as he goes, you know, but it is in media. I think what is not being done, there is no enough response to this, you know, we are not providing enough context. We don't actually, somehow the media world is losing memory, and somehow we don't remember things, and somehow we are not providing context for informations, and we are, in particular, this new technology is pushing us to make shorter stories and to make clickable stories. And certainly, if you do it shorter and if you make it clickable, there is no, a lot of things is missing there. So I again would like to say how professional journalism is important. I believe that we shouldn't answer to propaganda with another type of propaganda. I believe that the only answer is professional journalism, is investigative journalism. We have to repeat things, we have to remind people of things, we have to provide context, we have to find energy to fight each and every little lie and not to let it go. It requires a lot of work and a lot of sweat. Yes. Thank you.